Morning, my dear friends, and welcome to Surfside, California. It's a gorgeous morning here at sunrise. I mean, look at that. Right before the sun comes up, it's such a peaceful and beautiful time to be out on the water catching some fish. And there's a lot of guys out there really giving it heck right now. We're going to take you out and talk about some big bluefin tuna that are rearing their heads right now in several locations, and they are biting in the daytime. Not full speed, not for everybody, but we're starting to see more and more of that. And speaking of more and more of something, wow, the Ventura coast has got a lot of squid on it. There's squid at Catalina, at San Clemente, at Santa Barbara, in the Channel Islands. There's a lot of squid flushing in here. It bodes well for next year. It bodes well for right now. Are we about to get another big pop of white sea bass in the Channel Islands? We'll look into that a little bit more also. There's still Dorado, there's marlin everywhere. There's some great fishing down there in the Bay of LA. Ensenada's game is still on. Man, I'll tell you, too much great fishing. Don't you dare think about putting that rod and reel away. It is way too early. And you know what time it is, everybody. It's time for the morning briefing. Good morning. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is truly great to be back with you again. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to spend with me. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate you smashing that like button. That thumbs up really helps us a lot, and so many of you take the time to do that also. It means a lot. October the 23rd is almost here. It's going to be a wonderful day, no question about it, down there at 22nd Street Landing in beautiful San Pedro, California. We'll be there from 8 until noon. We've got a great seminar for you down there. We've got a beautiful meal. Don't you dare show up and not be hungry. We've got breakfast burritos for everybody, coffee. It's going to be a real celebration. And what's the reason? 1 million views here on Friedman Adventures, and we owe that all to you. It's an opportunity for me to shake your hand and say thank you. And of course, we've got some really great raffles. If you come down, buy a raffle ticket, it really helps us to keep the content flowing. So come down, buy a raffle ticket. You want to make a donation to our Mexico efforts, there'll be a big bucket for that. Also, you can throw some change in there or throw an envelope in there with some funds to help us get the thousands of items that we have across the border for January 6th, Dia de Reyes, or the Epiphany, when we are going to be giving out lots of great goods in Mexico, probably in several different areas. So we'll see you October the 23rd. Let's jump in to the fishing. Let me just take you down, talk about the ridge for a moment. The ridge down there about 700 miles south of San Diego. The Spirit of Adventure Long Range Boat had some exceptional yellowfin tuna fishing down there. The wahoo bite was off a little bit, but the yellowfin tuna fishing was outstanding, as they have been encountering some really great fishing. And this is the time of the year when that ridge area bites really well. You see outstanding fishing down there. So you long range guys who are headed down into that neck of the woods should experience some great fishing. The Bay of LA is another great venue for many sport fishermen who like to drive down the Baja Peninsula, as do I. Your best to go through Mexicali. The road is in great condition, and there's been some really great fishing in the Bay of LA. Misael Martinez with all these gorgeous grouper down there. And man, for me, that's what I like to fish for when I get down to the Bay of LA. Yeah, the yellowtail are great, and the Dorado are great, and the pinto bass are great, but those grouper are so extraordinary. You don't catch those every single day. So that is something that I really like to check out. All right, let's talk Ensenada, where they've had some choppy weather down there. Now, Ensenada is only 60 miles on the other side of the border. You can make that drive easily, and you get down there and you fish with Victor, our friend at Bluefin, who's been doing such a great job here recently. He's got 2 pongas that he sends out, super pongas, I'll call them, and they've been scoring some fish, but they have been running into a little bit of inclement weather, some bumpy weather, choppy weather, and that makes everything the more difficult. Finding the kelps is more difficult when you have that kind of weather. Just operating in general is more difficult. So a couple of down situations, down trips, but overall still looks great down there because there's a lot of yellowfin tuna around, and there's a lot of Dorado still around, and there's a ton of marlin spread up and down the coast all the way up to Santa Barbara Island and down south of Ensenada. You see a lot of striped marlin this year. We never have had what we surmise might take place, a wahoo in Southern California waters, or a blue marlin, or something totally exotic like that. But the season is a long way from over. As I told you a moment ago, don't put your fishing tackle away. There's still a lot of great stuff to come. All right, in terms of tackle, you definitely want to be using 25 to 40 pound, those two outfits, when you're fishing Ensenada or any of the offshore regions. However, we are seeing an awful lot of that big bluefin tuna, and some of it biting in the daytime. So bring your heavy 2-speed reels. You want to have 100-pound Spectra on there. You want to have, at least 100-pound fluoro if you're fishing bait and some of those stops, okay? Other times you're going to be fishing jigs, and when you are fishing that, you want 200-pound leader at least on there. That is a wise way to go, because we're seeing fish in the 100 to 200-pound class. We're having boats go into some shots of that stuff. New Loan, several other boats have been experienced. The last night on the Thunderbird, they were into some of that big great fish at night. And of course, at night you're fishing those knife jigs. You're fishing the Daiwa SK jigs, 200 to 500 grams, depending on wind and current and how deep those fish are. You're dropping right away when the captain says those fish are at 300 feet, drop. Then you do what Joe Martinez, who caught the 315-pounder this year. Incidentally, Joe will be there, over there at 22nd Street Landing in San Pedro this Sunday for our great celebration. He's a big part of it. His wife, Grace, is going to be there. Good morning, Grace. Always so happy that you are joining us. But as Joe says, when the captain says drop 300 feet, you're dropping 350. You're getting down and then coming back up through that fish, and you're doing it with great prisa. Well, I don't know why I said it in Spanish. Urgency. You want to get down right when the captain tells you to get down. So make sure you are paying attention and dropping when he says to drop. And there's a lot of that big fish around. There's fish out there near Cortez and Tanner, between Tanner and San Clemente Island. We've got fish down below. There's a lot of big bluefin starting to pop their noses into the situation. All right, 2.5-day trip on board the Cortez. Did I finish up with tackle? Oh, did I? All right, so you want to have that fluorocarbon, number 2 to number 2 size hooks. I'm losing my mind this morning. And also remember how important it is to choose a good hot bait. We love Opsin fluorocarbon, www.opsinusa.com. And make sure you put in FA at checkout. You'll get a love note from Greg Brown as well as a free gift. Yeah, I got electrocuted. Greg Brown has this taser, and if I don't mention Opsin USA and complete the tackle recommendation, he just fires it off. I just got nailed by that. So thank you, Greg, for keeping me in touch. All right, 2.5-day trip on the Cortez, where Brian Wynn is right now. Brian will be giving the seminar over there along with Roger Eckhart on Sunday at 22nd Street Landing. Their recent 2.5-day trip, 90 yellowfin tuna, 60 on the Dorado. The San Diego burned a ton of fuel yesterday. They leave in the morning, come back in the evening, C4 sport fishing. They looked everywhere. 32 guys with 32 on the Dorado in choppy seas. Maybe that was the deciding factor, because those guys that are leaving in the morning, coming back in the evening out of San Diego, have vacillated between some really great trips and not so great trips. They've had yellowfin tuna wide open one day and then very few yellowfin the next. It's a volatile time period right now, but there still is a lot of fish around, and I think we're going to get on some really good fishing here in the coming days. Need that weather to come down a little bit, and I think that would really help us a lot. Israel de la Cruz is such a great Friedman Adventures family member. On a recent trip on the Liberty, he was using Opsin fluorocarbon, and they had an absolutely fun and great trip on board the Liberty. That was a couple days ago. Old Glory out there fishing to the west. He went out there looking around, got into the 100 to 200 pound bluefin tuna and got their clocks clean. You got to have some heavy tackle, my friends, but what a show on big fish. What an extraordinary situation. Now, the El Dorado is up here out of Long Beach Sport Fishing, around the LA area for those of you watching us from some other part of the world. And once again, on a 2.5 day trip, their first day, 35 bluefin tuna for the El Dorado. There's bluefin spread up and down this coast, all the way up to Santa Cruz Island. We saw that, or Santa Cruz, California, I should say, as we saw that just the other day. So keep your ears on the morning briefing, because an explosion would not be out of the question with regard to that bluefin tuna. As water temperatures reduce, you might see that yellowfin, you might see that Dorado get out of here, although there's still great opportunities for that. We'll talk about where in just one moment, but that bluefin should hang around. It could bite well into the winter. We'll see about that. So yellowfin tuna, 5 to 10 pound class, a little bigger than that sometimes, but most of it's like that, is in that 80, 90 mile range right now. So a day and a half out of San Diego, perfecto for that fish. And there's still a lot of Dorado down there also. Some of that fish starting to edge down toward 100 miles. We'll see if it continues in its trek southward or it bounces back up. The other day, we had that fish move up to about 48 miles from Point Loma, and 10 boats got in there, including those day boats, and hammered that yellowfin tuna. Had a great trip, and then the next day it slid down a little further, and now it's down even quite a bit further. The Excalibur on a 2.5, 157 yellowfin tuna, 192 on the Dorado, and a yellowtail. Beautiful, beautiful fishing. Can't beat that. Awesome. Condor 3-day trip limits a Dorado with a $1.86 on the flatheads, and a lot of that flathead now is maybe 8 to 12 pounds, but there's a lot of nice fish. They grow so quickly. They've been around a while, and they've been munching out, so that is really great news. Thunderbird, 10 bluefin tuna, 80 to 150 pounds. Some really big fish last night also. Thunderbird out of Davies Lock here at Newport Beach, California, doing its thing. I can't say enough about that operation. They just keep catching fish, providing great, great customer service. And here we go again, starting to catch those fish at night. Those heavier jigs at night, the way you want to go, and you want to fish proper tackle, because there are some really big fish bumping around nowadays, and that is really great news. So hopefully we'll see how it goes. I know the Amigo is finishing up a 2-day trip. They've had some of that bluefin tuna, some bigger fish also. They are bouncing around the islands. They'll be back in. We'll get a report from Mark Paisano. I saw him as he was leaving and wished him all the very, very best. So some outstanding sign and signal. Are there misses? Yes, there are. There are some trips that are very poor, as I mentioned to you. And LA Orange County area in terms of Dorado, very tough right now. And it could be the end of it, but every time I say that, it bounces back. So I should say it's the end of it. And then we'll have wide open Dorado here later on today. There still is some great opportunities, however, if you're on day and a half type trips, to get in on this bluefin and yellowfin tuna. That nighttime bite has been exceptional and still looks really, really good. So we will keep our eyes on that for you very closely. The islands down there around Ensenada area, off there, Todos Santos, a little bit of yellowtail, big bonita, still there. A lot of nice big fat bonita, and also some decent calico bass fishing. The Coronado Islands still have a lot of yellowtail on it, 20 to 40, 50 yellows, not out of the question. It's been deep fish, so you're fishing yo-yo iron and you're fishing dropper loop to get in on that yellowtail bite, and it's good at times. A mix of rockfish and bonita, even a couple late season barracuda hanging out there. Up here at San Clemente Island region, there's so much tuna very nearby there. Now we're seeing a lot of really big fish, but at the island itself, you can still pick off some yellowtail. Some days it's not that great. You have a situation where the current's not moving, and then you can have a really slow trip. If you get good current, good conditions, then you can get 20, 30 yellows in there. And they're in that shallow water sometimes not, but when they're in that shallow water, you've got to get the brakes on them. You've got to slow those fish down, or they will wiggle their way into that rocky area or that kelpy area, and you will be history. So make sure you're fishing, if you can, with 40-pound and a bigger hook, like a 2-0 size hook. Choose a hot bait to get a bite. That'll make all the difference in the world for you. Catalina Island up and down, couple yellows here and there. Really good bonita fishing. Some of it small, some of it a little bit bigger. We've seen some really good fishing on the Pursuit recently. Scott Grant was out on the Pursuit, and Scott kept all the mackerel he caught and all the bonita he caught and turned it in to all of these masterpieces. I mean, some great stuff. Mackerel and sesame oil. Some of you are saying, whoa, that sounds terrible. I'm telling you right now, Scott says it was beyond delicious. So good, so delicious. And as you look at those dishes, it looks exactly like that. Scott taking that fresh caught bonita and mackerel and turning it into culinary masterpieces. Scott, thanks for sharing that. You're getting us all hungry already here this morning. So Catalina still pumping out a little bit of fish, but overall kind of tough out there. If you're looking for, wide open calico bass or wide open yellowtail or wide open sea bass, it's not there. Good action, nice weather. It's a beautiful morning, as you can see. I don't see any wind at all, so hopefully we're headed in the right direction there. At Santa Barbara Island, some big yellows also, sometimes in that short water, shallow water, so you got to fish heavier tackle there. And then Channel Islands, we continue to see really great rock fishing and an occasional sea bass or two. All that squid moving in there, though, that certainly bodes well for some outstanding fishing. Wouldn't be surprised to see a nice knock on the WSBs here very, very soon, and some nice big fat halibut. Also, great rock fishing up there in that neck of the woods. Along the beaches, Mauricio Lopez at Dana Wharf Sport Fishing. Look at that big calico bass. You ought to check out Mauricio's podcast out of Dana Wharf Sport Fishing when he came on the Friedman Adventures show. I believe Mauricio Lopez, and his father is a loyal viewer here to the Friedman Adventures podcast channel. I believe Mauricio was the first guy to alert us all about all this Dorado offshore. He was the guy who said, there's so much Dorado out there, Phil. It's going to bite one of these days. It's got lockjaw, but we are seeing copious amounts. Mauricio called that one, and so nice to see them catching some bass up and down the coast. Some calico bass fishing, a few yellows here and there, San Diego area. Really good on the other side of the border, down there in the La Bufadora and Puno Bond area for calico bass. Moving you up the coast, a lot of shallow water rockfish and that kind of stuff. Up in the Redondo area, they continue to catch some bass. Marina Del Rey, sculpin bass. And then up there in the Channel Islands, Island Spirit has been having some really good bottom fishing for whitefish and sheepshead and rockfish, providing excellent table fare for the anglers on board. And nice corvina fishing here on the beaches. We continue to see that. And also spot fin croaker bites in several different areas starting to come on now. Fall is a great time to catch those nice big fat spot fin croaker. So that sounds good to me. Incidentally, Frank Savino, who used to run the Enterprise, good guy, great friend of mine. Man, he sent me a message yesterday and said, Phil, I found a new beach down there in Baja. You got to come check it out with me. It's biting. It's really, really good. So I can't wait to get down there with my friend Frank and do the surf fishing thing. That's going to be a lot of fun. All right, everybody. October the 23rd, we'll see you at 22nd Street Landing, 8 o'clock. We got your breakfast burrito made for you, that coffee and the smell of all that food. You're going to think you're on a sport boat, but you're not. You're at 22nd Street Landing, where I get to shake your hands and thank you for the 1 million views. Now, well beyond that, the 5,000 subscribers, almost our 2-year anniversary. I'll tell you what, I can't thank you enough for all you do. If you could hit that like button right now, if you forgot to do it earlier, we will deeply appreciate that. And it's going to be a great day on Sunday there at 22nd Street Landing in beautiful San Pedro, California. All right, thank you so much for joining us. It's a gorgeous morning. I hope you have a fun day today. Maybe you can sneak off and do a little surf fishing for an hour or two. Maybe you're getting ready for the weekends, fishing, thinking and dreaming about that. Don't give up on this season. It is a long way from over. Have a great day, and I will see you this Sunday at 22nd Street Landing.